persuade him to offer these classes. In other words, instead of having Deborah Crowder do it, he would do it, and he did agree that he would do so. And the way they did that is they designated one of the counselors, a woman named Jamie Lee, to sort of go build a relationship, and you see a great relationship. With Nangoro, she did, and she then, we saw this in emails, she persuaded him to offer several of these classes and offer these classes so that the football players could take them. He did, and in the course of those 3 years between 2009 and 2011, he offered 6 of those classes. 34 or so football players took those classes, including 19 football players who took the very last paper class in the summer of 2011. 19 football players took that class and nobody else. Okay, so that was the ASPSA counselors. So once again, I'm going through the different categories of university personnel. We've gone through the ASPSA. Now I'm going to go through the athletic department personnel. I'm going to go category by, or subcategory by subcategory of those people. The athletic department management. We talked to everybody we could. We talked to Dick Bedore. We talked to John Blanchard. Dick Bedore is the athletic director, and asked them about what their knowledge of these paper classes. And in short, they said, look, we knew that these were easy classes. We knew they provided high grades. We knew that they were being conducted as independent studies, even though they were sometimes designated as lecture classes, but we didn't know that there was no professor involved or that Debbie Crowder was doing the grading, and we found nothing to contradict that. Football coaching staff. We were able to talk to Coach John Bunting and Coach Butch Davis. Coach Bunting was very helpful, very candid, and he said, look, I knew that these paper classes existed. I knew that they didn't require attendance. And in fact, Cynthia Reynolds, one of the ASPSA counselors, had told him that those courses were part of her strategy, a central part of her strategy to keep football players eligible. But he assumed that there was faculty involvement and assumed that they were otherwise legitimate classes. Butch Davis similarly says that he knew that they were easy classes, but believed that they were something that had been sanctioned by the faculty and didn't realize that there was no faculty member involved. We asked him about that presentation in November 2009. He didn't remember the presentation, but said that that is the type of presentation he might well have seen. That's football. Basketball. We interviewed, head coach-wise, we interviewed Matt Doherty, and we interviewed Roy Williams. Matt Doherty explained that he came here and there was already an ASPSA structure in place, and he didn't change it. He said that he understood that these AFAM classes were popular with the basketball players. He knew they were easy. As he said, he thought AFAM was the easiest department on campus, but he did not know that there was a process to steer people to these classes, and he didn't know that Deborah Crowder was basically running them. Coach Roy Williams, same. We talked to him at length, and we talked to him on 2 different occasions about what he knew about these classes and what he did in relation to AFAM classes. He explained that when he came on board in 2003, he brought in the staff that he used and he relied upon in Kansas for academic purposes. And that was himself, assistant coach Joe Holliday, and ASPSA counselor Wayne Walden. We talked to all 3 of them, and we'll start with Wayne Walden. Wayne was a man who cared deeply about his job, about the ethics of his job, and when he came in, he inherited a situation where the AFAM, a large number of the student athletes on the basketball team were AFAM majors and were taking these AFAM classes, and he understood that there was an established channel of moving basketball players into these classes. He continued that channel. He coordinated with Debbie Crowder. And he admitted that at some point he realized that Deborah Crowder was doing some of the grading of those classes, and he recognized he didn't see a professor being involved. So he did know about some of the main deficiencies of these classes. Yet he went ahead and passed some of those players over to those classes. We asked him very pointedly, okay, you knew about that. Did you tell anybody else? Did you tell Joe Holliday? Did you tell Roy Williams that Debbie Crowder was grading the papers in these independent study classes? And he said, I don't remember doing that. And we asked him very directly about that. And he said, no, I don't remember telling them about that at all. We then went, obviously, to Joe Holliday and to Roy Williams. Both of them said the same thing, that they didn't know anything about the fact that there was no faculty member involved, or that Deborah Crowder was managing these classes and taking the place of a faculty member. We asked about the fact that there were basketball players who were as you saw from the chart, who are taking these classes and what accounts for that. And Roy Williams explained that, yes, when he came in, there were a lot of AFAM majors and a lot of people taking on his teams taking those classes. It actually is something that caused him some discomfort because he saw this clustering. He understood that his students would understandably be interested, or his players would understandably be interested in the AFAM department, but he was concerned that it might either be the case or look the case that the basketball program is somehow steering players into that department. So he asked Joe Holliday after a couple years, please make sure we're not steering kids and try to steer kids into other classes just so they get a fuller experience. Joe Holliday corroborated that, said that that's exactly the mandate he got from Roy Williams. And he also said that he took it upon himself to tell Wayne Walden to try to keep the players from going into these independent studies because he liked the discipline and the structure of a real lecture class as opposed to independent studies. And Roy Williams said the same thing. And we talked to Wayne Walden, he said, yep, I got that instruction. That's why you see the reduction in basketball players toward the end of the decade in these classes. So you had Roy Williams and Joe Holliday taking these steps to reduce the number of paper classes that the players were taking. Now let me address very briefly, there have been allegations made public by Rashad McCants about his experience on the basketball team in the middle of the decade. He said a couple things about how tutors wrote papers for him and others, and about how Roy Williams 100% knew about the paper class scheme. Before he even made those public allegations, we tried to reach out to him to talk to him, and he didn't get back to our request for an interview. Once those allegations were made public, we reiterated that request by text and by letter. I said so publicly, and after I spoke to the Board of Governors down here in June, and he was asked about whether he'd talked to me in an interview that he gave back when he first made these disclosures, and he never submitted to our interview request. We'd have been very interested to talk to him. And as a result, as you'll see in our report, we say that there's no evidence to support his allegations. He didn't talk to us, didn't give us evidence, so there's no evidence. Baseball, we talked through baseball. The coaches essentially had the same level of knowledge about the ease of these classes, but no specific knowledge about the workings of them. And in terms of women's basketball, there was a counselor there, Jan Boxell, who knew completely what these classes were all about and steered students to them, basketball players to them. Women's soccer, the same level of knowledge as baseball. Okay, in terms of other knowledge of other groups, AFAM faculty, we spoke to all the AFAM faculty, and the vast majority of them didn't know anything about the paper classes. There were 3, however, who claimed that they didn't know anything about them, but they took actions that kind of reflected some knowledge of the fact that these classes existed. In terms of other faculty, we canvassed other faculty members around the campus and didn't find any who admitted to knowing about the classes. And in fact, we carefully examined the accounts of various people about a meeting of the Faculty Athletics Committee in 2007 that has generated some controversy ever since the Martin Report. And in that meeting, it was contended that some folks from ASPSA and the athletic department had effectively